Hi, this is Bob from How Many, and when I'm not recording lame promos, I'm listening to Set Listing Bruce. Or am I?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson, and tonight I have a treat for probably a very select group of people, but I have a local guy who he and I have interject. Jeff and I have talked via Twitter and Facebook, and we finally have worked out our schedules to talk about. But we are both huge P1s, which is the local sports radio station here in Dallas. And so we may get on a tangent about Tony Romo and will he be any good as a broadcaster, and we may not even get to talking to Bruce. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm good. Thank you, Jesse, for having me. I'm excited that Tony is going to be a broadcaster because that means that is the end of his quarterbacking days with the Cowboys.
You know, what's funny is, Jeff, being a Bruce Springsteen podcast, obviously I have a lot of fans from the East Coast and, a lot of Giants and Eagles fans, and there is some across Bruce, bringing people together, but there is also a lot of anger and hate, about us. And so I was looking at some of my Bruce fans, and they were already posting, I can't believe, they're firing Sims and Romo. Why are they giving this guy a chance? So,
Well, Sims goes inside and outside, right?
inside and outside, absolutely.
Can I tell you a funny story as far as you
Please.
Philly and well, maybe funny. You can be the judge. You can edit this out, right? If it's not.
Absolutely.
We went to the Buffer Change tour in 2004, right? And
Yeah.
we were in. I was in line to use the restroom and the porta potty outside, and we're standing there, we're making small talk to people, and this guy goes, "Where are you from?" And I go, "Oh, I'm from Texas." And he goes, "Oh, Texas, F Texas." And I go, "Well, I didn't vote for him,
Yeah.
I'm here." And he goes, "Oh, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your blanking place." And I said, "Oh, well, I can't help you there. I love my Cowboys."
This past August, Chris and I went up and attended one of the shows at the MetLife Stadium, and
Mhm.
and so Chris was Chris was born in '89. That Chris is my son, and so like the first Saturday after he was born on February 10th. That first Saturday he was home was when Jerry Jones bought the Cowboys. So Chris is quick to tell people he was born as a Landry baby. and so um he's 27, and so he has 28, I guess now. So he has grown up not remembering the Cowboys being good. Because he was just too young to enjoy the Aikman, Smith, Irvin Super Bowl years.
Right.
and he's just, for the longest time, Quincy Carter was the only quarterback that had won a playoff game in his life. And
Right.
so, but anyway, we're there at MetLife, and um, he was ready to just hate it. And he was like, "This is a really cool stadium." He says the acoustics were good. He said it was very. He couldn't believe how cheap parking was, even for the concert. And then he's like, "And they had pretty good popcorn, Dad." So,
And that's been my experience. We've seen Bruce many times in New Jersey and Philly. All the Mecca places to see Bruce, and the people could not be nicer. We've had nothing but good experiences, and even the guy that said F the
yeah.
Cowboys was really nice and funny person, and we got along really well. And the great part of being a Bruce fan and traveling is you meet so many people from all over the place that you would never meet normally, and you immediately have this link and this bond with each other, and it's just been a really special relationship that I've developed with people from all over Canada, New Jersey, Chicago, Atlanta. People that I email and we talk to. I mean, just this morning I was talking to a friend of mine from Atlanta who's a big Springsteen fan, and we met through Bruce, and still talk to each other all the time. And it's just a really special community that's out there.
I totally agree, Jeff. And that's one of the reasons why I started the podcast is and I'm sure that Pearl Jam fans have this, and Jimmy Buffett fans, and other bands, but there seems, and I am biased, there seems to be a little something special about Bruce fandom and this sense of family we have. And I remember I had driven to Nashville to see him back in, I guess, 12 or 14. I'm drawing a blank now. I'm going to
I was there, Jesse.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And I met a couple of online fans at a dinner, specifically Donna with Bruce Funds and some other people.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife was like, are you are you sure it's safe? You're meeting someone? I'm like, they're Bruce fans, and besides, they're all female and I'm guy. Shouldn't they be worried about me? you know? And so since then, Linda's kind of and amazed at this kind of, how open people are and how much they seem to love and enjoy. And, like Dale, from
I was
Houston,
about
it's
to
like,
bring him up.
yeah, you've got to have Jeff on the show. And so you and I had exchanged, and we were like, wait a minute, you're in Dallas? I'm like, yeah. And it's like, well, and like your wife's like, you're a Ticket fan? I go, absolutely. So
She is a bigger P1 than I am. She is a frequent listener. She listens all the time. And we have Brad Meltzer in common. Jesse, we have so much.
Yes, we do. Listening to the Ticket and that kind of language that we share.
Giggle. It is, yeah. I mean, I think that anyone who, it's hard to explain to people who don't listen to the station. Like I said, giggle. That's they have like a language of their own, and it's hard to tell people. Well, they don't talk about sports that much. I mean, unless there's something going on with sports,
Right.
And yeah. So where I know a lot of female listeners who love Gordon and Corby and just all the silliness that's there, and the politics and things like the entertainment stuff that they talk about. It's years ago when we lived in Dallas, we went to the same church as Corby, and when we were offering each other the sign of peace, my wife missed giving Corby the sign of peace. Peace be with you.
Yeah.
And I think she's still heartbroken to this day. It was like 14 years ago, and she's still very sad about it.
Where did you grow up in, Jeff?
I grew up in a very, very small town in Arkansas, and then we moved to Texas.
Okay. When did you move to Texas?
I was in the 7th grade.
Okay.
We moved to Waco, and Waco seemed huge to me. It was, I mean, this where I grew up from Arkansas to Waco. I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, it's such a big school all of a sudden, and now I drive through there and it's funny to me, but yeah, not exactly Springsteen country in
Yes.
either places.
What
But
what kind of music did your family listen to growing up?
I remember my grandmother. Looking back now, I mean, she had really, really great taste in country music. She had one of those huge, giant record players, the big stereos that took up an entire wall in her living room. And I can just remember there were always albums stacked. And she always used to say, music makes you young. And she just loved me. There was always music playing at her house. And I was over there all the time. Jim Reeves, Charlie Rich, Charlie Pride. She loved Jerry Lee Lewis's country albums. That was always playing. Hank Williams and Elvis, Johnny Cash, they were all big, big players in the house that I grew up. And then my brother is 10 years older than me, and he introduced me to Creedence Clearwater. That was like his favorite. He was in a band. He played drums, and he really loved that music. So it was weird. It's funny. I grew up with so much music that influenced Bruce, but I had no idea who Bruce was probably until the ninth or 10th grade. But it was there, and as I got older, that became my grandmother's music. You at some point as you grow up, you kind of, I think a lot of us, we kind of rebel against that music. We put it away. It's old people's music, and then you come back to it as you get older and appreciate how great that music was and the depth of it that you don't appreciate, when you're young. And then as I became older, in high school, I really got into to more punk influenced bands. But even like Social Distortion, I was a huge fan of Mike Ness and Social Distortion, and that had, I've always thought that Mike Ness was just a frustrated country singer. That's really who he wants to be. And Social Distortion and The Clash and The Police, those were my bands up till probably around 83. And then, who snuck into my life.
What's funny is I grew up, my grandparents were more into gospel music and a lot of that, but my mom and dad loved country music, and so we played that. Johnny Cash, same thing, Merle Haggard. In fact, last year when Merle Haggard passed, it felt like I lost my father all over again.
I totally agree. It was a devastating loss for me as well. That series with David Bowie and Prince and Merle Haggard. I mean, Merle Haggard meant as much to me as David Bowie or Prince, and all were huge blows. But yeah, Merle Haggard. I saw Merle Haggard at Bass Hall here in Fort Worth with Chris Christopherson.
I bet that was a good show.
It was amazing. Yeah. I also saw Merle Haggard open for Bob Dylan, and I thought he blew Bob Dylan off the stage. I thought he was just amazing that night.
Yeah, I was just slightly disappointed that Bruce did not do a Haggard song. And I'm certainly not judging. I don't know if you can do a song for everyone you lose, and I certainly think that the Bowie and Glenn Frey and certainly the Prince tribute was something amazing. The band doing Purple Rain with all of them dressed, wearing some shade of purple was something pretty special. But I kind of just had a little wish that, Sing Me Back Home or Mama Tried. I would have loved to hear the E Street Band just do, a cover of something Haggard. So you mentioned about the middle 80s. So how did you find Bruce? How did that happen?
I don't know if you remember this or not, but there used to be a show that came, I think it's called Night Tracks, and it came on TBS late at night on the weekends. It came like after midnight on Fridays and Saturdays. And I remember this so vividly. So, at that time, MTV had just had started, and there was all these flashy videos, and full of color, and I mean it was the '80s, just tacky dress, and then the first Springsteen song that I remember hearing or seeing was Atlantic City, and I came on, and I just remember staring at the TV going, what is this? Like you've had all of this rock and pop music, loud and fun and everything, and then this very bleak black and white video. The guy is not even in the video. It's just him and playing the guitar. He has a weird name, and it stuck with me. But, for the young kids listening to you, Jesse, we didn't have the internet where you could quickly, or iTunes, where you could quickly type in and say, who is this? But I just remember watching him or watching that video and just being really, I don't know what I felt, but it was different. It resonated with me, but it didn't stick with me right away. I just remember seeing him and thinking that was weird. And then a little bit later, Martha Quinn on MTV. I remember because what boy didn't have a crush on Martha Quinn?
Absolutely.
She played the Rosalita video from Phoenix, where the girls are coming up and scratching his face, and and he's all, hey, telling everybody to back off. And I remember watching that and being like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is great. This is great rock music, and this is fun. And then I was like, wait a minute, that's the same guy. That's Bruce Springsteen. That's the guy that did the weird song, from a few months ago. And I was so like, now I was really interested in him. And then that summer, June, I remember walking into the Sound Warehouse there in Waco, and Born in the USA was playing. And, sorry everybody, that's the first album I bought. That's just my age. That's how old I was. I grew up in the South. I had no recollection of who he was. I didn't know the River or Darkness. So I am unapologetically a Born in the USA kid. But I bought it. I bought some other tapes. I can't remember what I bought that day, but I just remember bringing that home, and that was it. Everything else went away. He immediately just clicked. He registered. And the weird part about it is I literally had read nothing about him at that point. I knew nothing about him. But I remember thinking, I haven't felt this way about anyone since Elvis. Mm-hmm. And I made this weird connection to him and Elvis, to what it was exactly. I mean, we know how much Elvis influenced him, but I just felt this like, wow, this guy, there's something about him that makes me think of Elvis. And then a few days later, bought Nebraska, and then I bought The River, and by that point I was hooked. I bought Dave Marsh's book, Born to Run, read it. I was literally the kid staying up all night reading this book to get through it. So that whole summer was just Bruce. And then, from there, Born to Run. So I guess Born to Run was, the fourth album that I bought. And then Darkness, which is still my favorite album of Bruce. And so it was an amazing 3 months, where it was everything. The funny part is he played at the Cotton Bowl during the Born in the USA tour, and when my wife and her parents were there at the Cotton Bowl, my wife Nancy, we've been married for 19 years now, and her parents had taken her. They spent the night. They picked her up at Catholic school. She was wearing the little Catholic school outfit, and the radio station interviewed them. And she has a scrapbook of Bruce. She's a Jersey girl from Italy, so she's Italian, and so it was meant to be. It was all like right there at the Cotton Bowl that day. But yeah, that was it. I was just I was hooked, and been hooked ever since.
I remember reading some article. And I can't remember where it was, but someone was talking about the art form of videos, and how what they were trying to do and how they originally were just promotional material that people would do to, give. And I remember someone talking about, as we hear the dogs in the background, um, of artists like Bruce Springsteen not even showing in his video. And Atlantic City is, um, such a haunting song, and the video, fits the song. I like you, you know, I'm a little bit older than you. I graduated high school in '77, but um, you know, a friend of mine, a friend of my wife's, had gone to school on the East Coast, so she was aware of Bruce, and I remember buying The River and kind of a casual fan at best. But then, like everyone else, Born in the USA came out, and it, was the CD or cassette that you owned that summer.
Hmm.
And the along with Prince and Michael Jackson, I guess Madonna, that the four icons of the '80s. Um, so I agree with you. Sometimes I think that Born in the USA gets a bad rap because it's so heavy rotation, right? To use the ticket thing where, how quickly do you punch out on that song
Right.
playing? But I think if you listen to it from a fresh perspective, there's reasons why those songs got so much airplay and how good they were. Um, you mentioned Darkness is your favorite album.
Hmm.
Why? What about it kind of spoke to you, especially since you did come in from, Born in the USA, and kind of retroactively went back to his older stuff.
Right. I think Darkness and The River, um, they, as I mentioned earlier, my grandmother's love of country music. That's the country music. The music that I first remember is the music that I grew up on, and the country elements of the two albums. Those the way that you can divide Bruce's career up to where you had those first three albums that are all masterpieces, but then the decision to write so tight. And the thing that I'm amazed at with Bruce, along with his writing, and I think that he's the best pop rock songwriter ever. Uh, I'm most amazed at his editing skills. And when you look at the book Songs, where he kind of shows, what he's written, and then him crossing out lines and crossing out words and getting the very specific right, just the perfect word choice, and how tight those songs became. And a lot of that is because of the country influence, where that he began listening to those songs like Hank Williams and Roy Acuff and Johnny Cash. So there's this huge shift. But at the time, I didn't realize that. As a kid, I think I grew up where there were factories, and I can remember growing up, men who were missing digits and men who had their fingernail. I remember as a kid, because you're kind of at their fingernail level, and they still had grease on their fingernails that they couldn't wash away. And I can remember my coming home in a brand new used car. It was Nebraska, but I remember just that was the community that I grew up in, and so that those songs very much resonated with me. Those even though he's from the Northeast, although that area is known as Texas for people migrated up there.
Yeah,
But those songs, I connected. I mean, plus Darkness Rocks. I mean, it's just such
sure.
a great guitar album. But as I've gotten older, I mean, just and even as I became in college and to creative writing classes and journalism classes. I mean, he just seeing him as a writer, not to mention the greatest live performer, but just his writing skills on those two albums, or double album, it just grabbed me. It was close enough to music that I knew, with Credence and country, but different. But it also, Darkness had a rock edge, and as I mentioned, I grew to love social distortion and punk music, or punk influenced music, and I think, as he said, there were certainly elements of that, at least as far as an influence on him for Darkness, and so I just think it was a lot of different influences that he was taking at the time that was music that I was very familiar with myself, and like you mentioned, Merle Haggard, I do think that there's a lot that those two have in common. I mean, as far as the themes and what they've written about, and it's always amazing to me that I know that Bruce was a fan of Merle Haggard. He's mentioned them in interviews, but I am sad that they never got together and did anything, because to me they are somewhat parallel. I mean, just as far as and even Merle's social conscience. Now, granted, he's some of the songs that he wrote, they were far to the right, but Merle also wrote a song called Irma Jackson that not a lot of people know about, but it's about a mixed race relationship. He wanted that to be the single, and of course, in the 70s, and the record company said no. But I mean, so he wasn't afraid to push the envelope and to push people's buttons either. And so anyway, I that album just really spoke to me and grabbed me, and it felt comfortable to me. But like I said, it also, you could roll down the windows and rock out to it too.
I grew up in Louisiana, where the oil fields and the refinery, and yes, there was, my stepfather did have, missing the tip of his finger, and my brother-in-law was in an accident on an oil rig, and he has a scar on his arm to this day. And there is that sense of, we were a pretty heavy union town, and there was this kind of management, the thought. My dad was in the military, so we moved around a lot, and we're certainly lower middle class. And, every once in a while I will hear someone complaining about Bruce, talking about struggling and how he's a millionaire and what's he know. But I have said many times that I think your upbringing never leaves you, that no matter how comfortable you later become, if you struggled as a child growing up, that those scars and that thought never goes away. You remember that. And I also think it's part of the tradition of, as an artist, using your art to talk about things that are going on. And, I really appreciate you bringing up Merle Haggard, and that I had not thought of that. But despite one of them being more conservative or being more liberal, both of them were about working men and women and, making ends meet and getting a living wage and taking care of your family, if we can make it through December, and there is that, you could very easily see them swapping songs, talking about how we're going to get through. And I agree with you now that that's one of the things I would have liked to see. And it would have been pretty cool to hear Haggard do Factory, or, very nice. I also love the fact that your lovely bride was able to see him at the Cotton Bowl. When was the first time you got to see him perform?
That show. So whatever that was that 85? I think that was.
Wow.
Because I didn't see the reunion show, but I saw the Cotton Bowl show.
Okay.
I can't remember. I think that was 85.
Okay.
I think Reunion Arena was 84, and
okay.
the Cotton Bowl, because it was shaky. They thought that he was going to break it. It was like it was vibrating. It was
Yeah.
moving like it was going to collapse. And then '88, the Tunnel of Love, and that's the other thing, that people, younger fans, they've been so blessed since '99 of just an album a year, and just the most productive period of his entire career. And back then, Born in the USA ends, and you're sitting there going, okay, when's another album going to? When are we going to tour again? And then Tunnel of Love, I remember seeing. We saw him in Houston and Austin, I believe. Maybe we saw him in Dallas, Houston, and Austin. But I remember, I think it was Houston. It was either Houston or Austin. But we got there a little early, and we were walking around, and there was a young woman, a teenager, and she was holding a picture of Bruce, and she was crying. And we walked up to her, and we said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "He was here." And we were, what, who was here? And she said that Bruce had stopped his car and gotten out and looked at the picture and had hugged her and, was very nice to her and got in his car and left. And I just remember thinking that was awesome. And then as I walked away going, I just missed Bruce for like 5 minutes. But
Yes.
probably best that I wasn't there because I would have been Chris Farley, remember?
Oh,
but yeah.
Absolutely. As I've shared many times, I was lucky enough to get a ticket down in Austin at the book signing, and the whole way down in Austin, I'm Luca Brocza just saying over and over again, may it be a masculine child, I'm like, okay, what am I going to say? What am I going to say to him? And there was no way you could tell him in the 6 seconds, how much his music has meant to me. So I always put this disclaimer. I do not believe that the number of times you've seen Bruce perform live is a fair barometer of how big of a fan you are. I think a lot of that has to do with where you live, luck, economic situations. But just for the record, do you know how many shows you've gone to?
Well, you know what? I knew you were going to ask this question, and I was going to say the exact same thing, that I don't care if you've never seen him. If he means something to you, and then it doesn't matter. If you've never seen him, you can be 16 and never seen him, and you can be 46 or 66 and you've seen him 100 times. It doesn't make you a greater fan. And I 100% agree. And there's nothing I enjoy more than being at a show and standing in the GA, hopefully in the pit, next to a kid who has never seen him before.
Right.
It is my favorite thing in the world, just to see their emotion and to get to experience, for someone who's seen Born to Run so many times, to get to see a kid there who's seeing it for the first time and seeing that look in his face is just my favorite thing. With that said, I'm almost embarrassed. I'm stumbling over this, Josie. I would say
It's
close
okay.
to triple digits.
Okay, that's good. And some people don't count. Dave Marsh,
I don't count. I don't know. I know Dave, but
yeah.
I've seen him a bunch.
That's good. Much like on a football game where you go for the 2 points, you don't kick the field, extra point, and you miss it, and so it seems like you're chasing that point the rest of the game. Because I did not see him until the Rising Tour in 2002. That was the first time I seen him. I feel like I am chasing shows because there is so much I haven't seen. I have said many times my other obsession in science fiction is, Star Trek and Doctor Who. And if I had a TARDIS, I would use it to go back to all these other Bruce shows. And that would all I'd use it for.
That's a running joke at our house, too. I always say
Yeah.
I would so abuse a time machine if I had one, because I would just be going back and seeing like the Who and,
Yeah.
season.
Well, and,
Winterland.
I grew up in Lake Charles, Louisiana. And so that is the heel of the Louisiana Boot, and it's 3 hours from Houston. And
Mm-hmm.
I think about that in 78, 79, 77, 76. He's playing in Houston. He's playing in small clubs in Houston, and I just didn't know.
Right.
And you go, God, forget going and buying Apple stock. I just want to go back and go, hey, Jesse, go get in your 63 Mercury Meteor with 35 cents a gallon gas and drive to Houston.
Yeah.
so, um, so how many times what did you think of the River Tour? Because some fans were a little disappointed that, 2/3 of the set list was the same every night. What were your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts?
When he announced it, I was a little disappointed from the standpoint of I don't think that there has been an artist that I can think of that, I think since 99, with the reunion tour where they're kind of reestablishing themselves. But I think you could look at from 2000, from the riot till now, and you almost have a separate Rock and Roll Hall of Fame career. I think his body of work since the Rising, just it's some of my favorite stuff that he's done, and I try really hard not to compare Wrecking Ball to Born to Run, but I think that Wrecking Ball is one of the best albums of the decade. I just love that album. I love Magic, and so I really enjoy what's coming next. I love that he plays as much new stuff as he does classic stuff. And so, and I remember, I think it was in Backstreet in the magazine that there was an interview with Benny Lopez, and Benny asked Bruce if he could do Steel Mill stuff, and Bruce told him sure. And Bruce said something along the lines of always moving forward, never looking back.
Right.
And so that was. So at the beginning of that tour, I felt like, man, I just feel like, and knowing that he has a new album that's just waiting to come. I totally feel like he's going to change his mind, and we're never going to hear the album. But
So, by the way, Peter Chianca from Blogness on the Edge of Town, I talked to him earlier this week. This episode will go out next week as we record this. We're recording this on April 6th. He has the same theory. He thinks that because of the current political climate, that he will want to do a new, kind of an updated version of Magic, maybe, and that we may never get this album at all. So I hope not, but I think you may have a valid theory.
We'll see. I hope not, because I really would like to hear that album. I think the other interesting thing is just how experimental he's gotten as he's gotten older too. So I say all that to say that when we went to see the River tour, I was not. I felt like, okay, I'll go see it once, and that will be it. I think I ended up seeing the actual River album performed 3 times, and ended up seeing 6 or 7 shows total. I say that because we were at Virginia Beach. I can't remember because we went to Virginia Beach and then we were going to Philly, but there was a hurricane, and we ended up staying extra in Virginia Beach, and we missed Philly, so I can't remember exactly how we ended up seeing. But seeing that River, the album, I just I was like, this is what I get for doubting Bruce going into it, because he brought a vitality and a sense of urgency to those songs that I should have expected. And I loved it. I loved what he did with the songs. I thought seeing them in their arrangement, one after the other, and that flow, and you realize, God, this guy wrote this song when he was 27, 28 years old, 29, and having these thoughts, and I just loved it. I thought it was really beautiful, and Stolen Car, and The Price You Pay.
Yeah.
Those were bucket list songs, and then to hear them together the way that he meant for them to be, because we know how anal he is and meticulous, and so knowing that playlist was so important to him when he was not yet 30, but and putting that together, And then seeing it there, it truly was a work of art. Now, I felt like the Wrecking Ball tour was unbelievable, and High Hopes, and I loved just like him flying by the seats. Nashville.
Yeah.
That show was like wow. So, but
Yeah.
but seeing this kind of regimented show was really amazing. But then going to DC and him coming out with New York City Serenade and all of those songs, before Born to Run was just as amazing. So with that said, I've learned to just accept and just follow whatever he's going to do.
Friend of the podcast, Allie Scales, always says he never disappoints. I ended up seeing 4 shows on the actual River tour, and then the 5th show, the one in Jersey. And Linda asked me, okay, I know you're glad to see him, but has it bothered you? You've gone to 4 shows with basically the same set list. I mean, we do the River, and then we kind of do a mini, greatest hits, live hit, set list. And I said, well, the songs I don't like, I still don't like. I mean, and when I say I don't like, it's just not on my favorite. But I will tell you, every time I heard Independence Day, the idea that as a father, he's singing this song that he wrote as a son, and now then he's singing it from his father's perspective was pretty touching. And
you just gave me goosebumps. I had that exact same feeling. I left those shows every night with the exact same thought of just how those songs changed and this new meaning of the years that were behind them. And yeah, it was really beautiful. And now for myself, being a dad and hearing that,
yeah.
I can remember I had a cousin who he was not a Springsteen fan, but I remember that he got into a really bad knockdown drag out fight with his parents when we were in high school. And I remember leaving him in the car with Independence Day. It was a very cheesy kind of high school moment, of you listen to this song, but it really meant something to him that night. And so that also came flooding back to me during those shows.
Well, Chris went to his first show in Oklahoma City, and he said, okay, let's make it a guy's trip, Dad. Let's, I haven't seen Bruce, and you've been wanting me to go, so let's go. And he was very impressed. In fact, Independence Day, he specifically thinks the story of him and his mom, my wife. There's a lot of that. They have gotten over it now, but during, his last part of high school, first part of college, there was a lot of, angst between the two of them and a fair amount of anger. And he, it was funny, today I was on the Bruce Springsteen website and looking to buy a new download. I was going to get a show to play next weekend for my chemo. And Chris is like, is it a show? Have they announced the new tour? Let's get tickets now. And so because he enjoyed Oklahoma City, but then when we went up to Jersey and we did the 4-hour August 25th show, he was sold. He was, he's like, wherever he's playing, I'm there with you, Dad. And what's funny is, I bought the CDs, and his girlfriend is living in Colorado, and he went to visit her, and he brought that show that we attended, and now then she's listening to it, so slowly winning over the next generation for Bruce. The other thing I thought, Jeff, that I enjoyed the River is that because of David Bowie and Glenn Frey's passing, and then later Prince, I think the band knows that the road in front of them is shorter than the road behind them, and that they know there is a finite number of nights left where they get to play together. And there is such a energy and joy them playing together that that made me sing the show. And I'm on record. I am a big fan of the E Street Orchestra. I love the Wrecking Ball. I love the backup singers. I love the horn section. I love this big E Street band on steroids. But
Right.
this band, the new core group, which is still pretty big, it was a pretty amazing band.
Yeah, I just thought about when we were in Louisville, we met Mills. Mills was walking down the sidewalk, and we were like, "Was that Mills?" And we talked to him, and that's what we were telling him there. First of all, he was such a nice person, but you did feel like, I mean, there is at some point this is going to end, and him closing with Bobby Jean, Bruce closing with Bobby Jean, and it did feel there was a certain amount of my wife after every show would be like, "That's it. This is going to be their last tour." And I don't think that's the case, but there was at least a sense of the close of a chapter, maybe. I don't know, and I think you're right. I mean, maybe it was just the amount of death that was hanging over this tour, and really, the people that have died just in the past few years, within the Bruce camp, and I think part of it too was just the melancholy aspect of that album, that it did leave you really appreciating their history. I thought, when every time that you walked out of there.
So I have a question for you. I was at Louisville as well. I was so happy. By the way, I am normally greedy. At the end of the show, I want more. I
Hmm.
just and when they finished the show and I saw Max give his drumsticks to someone, and they're kind of waving goodbye, and all of a sudden Bruce picks up his guitar and they do Bobby Jean. I felt like we'd gotten this. It truly was, you discovered a Christmas present under the tree. Like on not
Right.
even Christmas night, like on December 26th, like, oh my
Right.
goodness, it's not, and so I felt this whole just joy. Um, and so I do agree with that sense of joy and that sense of, and I think part of it also, Jeff, is this is the tour we weren't supposed to get.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, it's bonus, right?
I mean, this past year and a half, in a lot of ways, and I actually had um, one of the guys who does social media for Greasy Lake, is 2016 the greatest Springsteen year of all time? And I think you can make that argument between the tour, and then the box set, and then the autobiography, and then the
Hmm.
the 4 hour shows, and now then he's continued to doing the summer in Australia. I mean, this year and a half has been pretty special for us as Springsteen fans.
And the one thing that I haven't forgotten or taken for granted is the downloads. I mean, that's been huge. As a kid of in the '80s, who was ordering bootlegs from the back of Rolling Stone and paying, saving up to get that and paying a ridiculous amount of money. I mean, to have these great quality recordings from the current shows, and then some of the retro shows that he's released. Also, it just added to this freedom, because again, he was so anal and OCD about everything,
Yeah.
that we would wait and wait and wait, and yeah, it is like he's really just giving now, and I never would have thought that he would have written a book where he opened up so much about himself, and it's because he's just always been so guarded. But yeah, and it has been a really magical time. To me,
And
it's just been an amazing time since the reunion. From tracks all the
yeah,
way to now, it's just been amazing.
yeah, I've had people on the show, podcast that we've talked about that, I would be okay with a set list that started with Tunnel of Love and went forward. And the
I would too.
guy said, I would be okay with a set list that, darkness and backwards. But I agree with you, Magic and Wrecking Ball. I mean, there is just so many great songs on that it is it, in the it it truly does not look like he's losing his fastball.
Mm-mm.
I mean, he is still able um, to do great songs and songs that mean something. And he has a story to share and a voice. And I just think have been really blessed to see this um, renaissance or this second chapter of his life. I agree with you. This, in a lot of ways, just from the rising on, is a Hall of Fame career just in that.
Yeah, I mean it's something like long time coming. I mean, as a dad, I mean that song just man, it's just a punch in the gut. And I grew up in the South, and nothing about my childhood was normal.
Right.
I mean, I'm not going to lay on the couch and go through that, but it just, but that song really, really just grabs me every single time, and to be so, like you were talking earlier about, the limousine liberal, and those aren't the words that you use, but I mean
Right.
that's what we hear, and but for him to still be opening himself up and writing about, I mean, my God, I mean, to be his age and his stature and to write and put out a song like Reno, that's pretty brave.
It
And
is.
it takes a lot of balls to, no pun intended with that song, but to put
Yeah.
that song out there. And it just shows uh, what an artist he still very much is. And to continue to push his audience, because I think that there's a large amount of his fan base that would be happy with if he just stopped at 1978 and didn't play anything. One of the things in his book that just I was just like, oh my gosh, John Landau. But in the book he talks about that he shows John Landau when they're coming back for the reunion tour, and he shows John Landau a set list that he's planning, and it's a ton of tracks songs. And John Landau was like, people aren't coming back to see you do track songs; they're coming back to see you do, the hits. I would have loved to see the track.
Oh yeah, right.
I would have been thrilled to just follow that tour around for
Oh
nothing
yeah,
but tracks. So
absolutely.
I'm a big fan of the, as little Steven calls them, the lost argument songs. Those, and all of the bonus, the river outtakes and the darkness outtakes and tracks, all of those. And that's the other thing that's amazing about him is you had this with all of those outtakes that he's released. You had this whole other alternative artist, a path that he could have taken, where he would have maybe even been bigger. He at least maybe have been received much more radio play than
Well,
he ever received.
and I think little Steven, right, in one of the interviews for maybe The Ties That Bind, or it may have been one of the other documentaries, that said that Bruce is one of the great pop songwriters that, if he had wanted to pursue that, like supposedly, right, when he said fire, like, really, we're giving this one away? Like, like, are we sure? And
Right.
and yeah, I mean, there is a joy, and there is so much, wonderful music, and I love hearing people cover him, and them
Mm-hmm.
take that music and kind of do their own spin to it. So yeah, there is a whole nother alternative world out there where Bruce may have been this, pop icon, and
Right. Well,
uh,
Mellencamp said that on Stern the last time that he was on
yeah,
Stern recently. that Bruce could have been the greatest pop songwriter of all
Yeah.
time if he'd wanted to be.
Right.
And he said that people don't really appreciate his melodies and just what he can do with 3 chords.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's amazing.
Absolutely. I want to get to a few wish lists of songs you haven't got to hear live, but before that, any other stories or memories Bruce related you want to share?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I think during the Seeger sessions. I'm sorry, I don't know why I said Seeger sessions. I think I'm still thinking of his past work of the Rising. We
Yeah.
got to do the fan run line a few times early on in that tour when the
Hmm.
fans were still doing it for the lottery system, and that I remember that was really really special. Again, like we were talking about, you get to meet such really amazing people. And the thing I remember about that, there were a couple of times where people came up and they couldn't speak English, but they knew to write their name down and they knew to hold out their hand to get their number, and then they knew to show up at certain periods of time. I can remember we met some guys from Germany once, and some other people that were that could not speak English, and that just blew me away. That was, that they were such they loved him even though they couldn't speak the language well enough to talk to us. That's just one of my favorite memories. I have a
That is
guitar
a
pick.
great memory. Oh, you do
Yeah,
have a
it was
guitar pick? Yeah.
from
Cool.
Steve Van
Okay.
Zandt, not from Bruce. I'm still holding out from him. Bruce once leaned over and told my wife that he loved her bandana. I remember that.
Nice.
Yeah, I was kind of jealous. I'm like, Bruce, I'm right here, but
Yeah. Hello. Hello. Yes.
but I think, and during the Rising tour, which is still so special to me, I saw when he played that 10-night stand in Jersey, I saw the final 3 nights of that 10-night stand, and to see people that you knew were impacted by 9/11 standing and crying and holding each other, and I can remember being on the front of the GA line. I mean, I'm sorry, in the pit a couple of times, and being on Clarence's side and seeing tears just streaming down Clarence's face a couple of times during Your Missing and Empty Sky. And those are memories. As I'm talking about, I have goosebumps thinking about that too. That I'll never forget. Just how much Bruce's body of work meant to that band and to Clarence in particular is something that is just wedged into my memory so
So,
much.
yeah, Jeff, were you at the show here for the Final Four tournament? Did you?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
I lived through Pat Green and the rain. The rain
Yes.
was better.
Yeah. It. As we once again go to area that probably no one else cares about. The morning guys on the ticket are not big
Mm-hmm.
Springsteen fans. They are big U2 fans.
Right.
And they often make fun of Bruce and his guitar.
Respirator.
Yes, and
Respirator
everything.
Bruce.
But I remember them saying after that show, they got it. They said,
Yeah, I
we
remember.
understood now why people are so passionate about it.
I can't remember if it was Gordon. I think it was Gordon, but was so impressed with what a guitar player he was. Cover Me, I remember, really stayed with them. Just the way that he tore up the guitar on that. So, yeah, that was a really special show.
And the Dallas Morning News critic, rock critic that I'm drawing a blank on name now, the guy, the observer that's been on the ticket for a very long time, talked about. He said this
Wolonsky?
Wolonsky said this may have been one of Bruce's greatest shows, just because of the small audience and the intimacy of it, and the way he interacted with the crowd. I know it felt really special, even though it was, it barely broke the 3 hours, if not. But I know, and it was a very hit-centric set list because he knew he was playing to a very wide variety. But just a truly special show that I kind of feel blessed that I got to see that.
Me too. There were a group of kids behind us, college kids from Wisconsin, who were there for the Final Four, and they were so excited about seeing him. And I remember when the show was over, I can't tell you how many strangers I've hugged through the years.
Yeah.
It's just like all of a sudden you're like, yeah, he's doing this, and you end up hugging these people, and you're like, why are we hugging? I don't. But they, again, just the look on their face, and the kid behind me, he caught the basketball when they did the jump ball when
Right.
Kevin Buell tossed up the jump. He caught it, and he held on to that ball through the whole show. And but I just remember when it was over, just how elated they were that they had seen him, and they realized this is special, and he's special, and this band is special, and it was just the energy of those 4 kids. I'll never forget. They made the night for me, and just seeing, through their eyes, getting to see him for the first time, and I love that experience.
Yeah.
Living vicariously through them.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is that joy. I know when he was here for the River tour in Dallas, I was between 2 couples, and on my right they had said, we just happened to be in Dallas, and we were coming to Dallas for something else, and we saw, oh, Bruce is coming here, we should get tickets. And they had never seen him before, and the people on the left had said the husband and wife said the last time we saw him was the original River tour. And and which I'd heard that a fair amount of people. And so that was really fun to be between this, these couples that had this different perspective. And, and I'm a big comic book fan, and, one of the rules that as a comic book writer, they will say every issue of a comic book is someone's first comic book. So you need to write this in a way that they can understand what's going on. And, every Bruce show is someone's first Bruce show. And if you are Mr. Cynical, I don't want to hear Badlands again, or really, I would give up Born to Run so that I could get, an obscure song from Tracks. But there are people that want to hear that, that iconic, Born to Run, they want to hear Badlands. I know the first 7 times I saw Bruce live, I did not hear him do Thunder Road. I was like, I'm never going to hear Thunder Road live. And then I've started every show since. But, and that's okay. I never get tired of it. So, kind of that is my transition. Is there when he gets out on the road again, I know you're happy to hear anything he wants to perform, but do you have a couple of wish list of songs that you're chasing?
Well, any of the outtake songs I would be, ecstatic to hear. But the one song that I've missed, and I've missed it by like one show so many times, is the Prove It All Night with the 78 intro.
Yeah.
I just have missed that song, and that song really, I love it so much. I've loved it since I was a kid. Since, again, saving up my money and getting that Winterland boot as a teen, and still have missed it. And I really, really want to hear that song. The other song, I've heard it now 3 times, but it's Thundercrack. When our son, during the Magic tour, Bruce played in Philadelphia in October. Our son was born in November. And my wife, who is a big Springsteen fan, said, go to Philly and see Bruce. And I was like, no, I'm not. We're a month away. Who knows what's going to happen? And she was like, it'll be fine. You have to go see him in Philly. You got to go. So she loves Thundercrack so much. So she's a big Grateful Dead jam band fan, and she loves that song. And sure enough, he played it both nights in Philly. And then when there was a hurricane at Virginia Beach, we were going to Philly, but then because of the hurricane, we decided to stay We saw him at Virginia Beach, and then we flew home, and we didn't go to the Philly show. Well, sure enough, he played Fender Craig. So for her, and to get me out of the doghouse that I've been in since, 2007? Not really. But I really want to hear Fender Craig with her. So.
That would be nice. Virginia Beach was a nice show.
I loved it. I loved it so much.
I've heard that's a very intimate auditorium, an intimate venue. And
there wasn't the pressure. You were if you had GA, you were in the pit. And so that was a really relaxing kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what I've heard from somebody else. Well, good. So, Jeff, this was amazing. Thank you so much. Any last thoughts?
Thank you, Jesse. And I just want to say that it's great to be with you. And you know this, but you have been in all of our hearts and prayers. And we are all thinking of you and praying for you, and you will continue to be. And I just wish you the best from here on out.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. As we record this, I am scheduled for my first chemo next Wednesday, which will be the 12th. I have my F Cancer playlist that is very heavy on Bruce to listen to, and so I'm excited and I'm ready for the next journey, and I do feel everyone's loves and prayers, and it has meant a great deal to me. Jeff, if someone wants to reach you, do you have a Twitter handle?
I do. It's the very creative Jeff Calaway. That's my name. And it's all A's and one L. CALAWAY at Jeff Calaway.
Very nice. I am at Jesse Jackson DFW. If you want to be on the podcast and talk about Bruce and all that implies, please send an email at setlustingbruce@gmail.com. See, you're one of the few people that gets that joke.
Yeah, I like it.
We have a Facebook page. Please check that out. And if you could go to iTunes to rate and review the podcast, it would make me very happy because it is the best way for us to get new listeners. Jeff, this was a blast. Maybe in a month or so we could have you and your lovely bride join, and we could talk about this, maybe a Bruce marriage show.
All right. If we can get her on here, then I will shut up and let her speak. She's the
okay, that sounds good.
That would be great.
All right. We're going to end with now, our luck may have died and our love may be cold, but with you forever I'll stay. We're going out where the sand's turning to gold, so put on your stockings because the night's getting cold. And maybe everything dies, that's a fact, but maybe everything that dies someday comes back. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, listeners, and we'll talk to you soon. I do think that there are other fandoms, as we talked about on the show, but I just think there is something special about Bruce's fans, and I think my son is a perfect example. You know, Chris went just because he was going to go with his dad. And then when he went the second time up to Jersey, you know, he is now, whenever he plays, I'm there. You know, I'm going to be their dad. Yeah, exactly.
Well, our son's 9, and we've told him, you know, this is it. The next time he comes around, you're coming with us. It's
yes,
time. You know,
very nice. Absolutely.
I have to tell you, and then I'll let you go because I know you've been on the phone with me forever, but my wife was at Oklahoma City as well. She said it was the strangest crowd that she's ever seen at a Bruce show. I was at WrestleMania with my little boy that day.
Well, so this is so funny because Chris and I talked about when WrestleMania was in Houston, I guess number 16 or 17.
Steve Austin.
Yes,
turn.
And Steve Austin turned heel. Chris was in the 7th or 8th grade, and we had gone to Raw, you know, one of the shows there at Reunion Arena, and he said, God, WrestleMania is going to be in Houston. It's the closest thing. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, you get straight A's, I will take you. And he got straight A's, and we went. And it was just him and I, and we went down and we did the whole WrestleMania thing beforehand. You know, they have the the kind of expo, and we did that, and then we went, and and he's asking permissions if he can shoot the bird at the audience, and we just we had a great time. And so we're driving to Oklahoma City. it all of a sudden hit me. I said, wait a minute, WrestleMania is tonight. They're in Jerry World. He goes, yeah. He said it wasn't a very good card. Tickets were real expensive, and so we decided. He says, I'm taping it, and I'm gonna stay away. Spoiler free. I
Right.
decided, and I'm like, you're going to see Bruce instead of WrestleMania, and he goes, yeah, I want to do that for you, Dad. So we talked about that, because just this past weekend was WrestleMania, and Chris was like, I was like, last year we were at Bruce. He goes, yep, and I have no regrets. So
Well,
that's cool. You're with your son.
and I have no regrets either. I would have gone to with him to WrestleMania a million times, but yeah, it was really fun. I mean, but my wife just said, she was like, it was like going to a Catholic church and you're the only Catholic in the place. She's like, I felt
Yeah,
like she's like, I felt such a responsibility. Like this is where we raise our hands up, dude. This is where
yeah.
we pump our fists. Like she just felt
Well,
like that they
and so,
that we were
we had the
virgins there.
question, because I asked a lot. I go, is the reason, and is it chicken or the egg, is the reason he never goes to Oklahoma City because we don't sell tickets, or does he not sell tickets because he never goes to Oklahoma City?
Right.
And so we could have gotten a lot better seats, Chris and I, but we didn't know. We just kind of put there, and so yeah, and I had a guy that from New Mexico heard that the tickets were going so cheap, he and his family all jumped in the car and came down to see. So yes, it was a very weird crowd, but
It was.
that's neat that you went with your son to WrestleMania. That's awesome.
We
So
had a
cool.
blast.